Wonderful. Welcome, everyone. Um, this is a webinar part of the European Public Health Week that has already started on Monday. And at 6 Seconds, we are really proud and delighted to join forces for this European Public Health Week, which is a regular event. And you can check all the other opportunities to learn and connect on their website and divided by days during all the week. Today is day 3. And this day 3 is really about mental health at the crossroads. And it's investing across public health, primary health care, and communities. And 6 Seconds in Europe decided to join because we are a global international community and network, and our focus is the well-being of people. And this year, the focus will specifically be the youth well-being. So what we are trying to do is really growing and sharing skills and opportunities to grow skills for adults and youth. 6 Seconds, as I said, is a global network. For those who do not know us, we are operating all over the world in different regions: Europe, North America, Latin America, Asia Pacific, Middle East, Africa, and India, China, and Japan. And our vision is 1 billion people practicing emotional intelligence. As you can see, my name is Ilaria Boffa. I am the 6 Seconds Europe Social Impact Manager, and I'm so glad to have today with me as a co-host Lisa Allen.
Hello, thank you.
Lisa will then introduce herself and share with you practical programs that she is implementing and facilitating in the UK. We'd like to start with a poll because this webinar is about nurturing resilience, so nurturing resilience for youth. And so let me share with you the poll that we prepared, and you can answer this poll that hopefully you can see on the screen. And the first question for you is, what have you noticed recently about youth feelings? Can you see the poll?
I can.
Hopefully, yes. And it's a multiple choice, so you can vote. Yes, you can. You can vote more than one answer. So uncertainty about future opportunities, grief about the planet, anxiety about success, overwhelm about relationships, excitement about artificial intelligence, isolation and disconnection, stress about social media, aggressiveness connected to division and polarization.
Mhm.
Mm,
That's interesting, isn't it?
yeah.
Uncertainty about future opportunities.
Mm.
And it's interesting, you've got uncertainty about future opportunities and no excitement about AI.
Yeah.
And you wonder if those two are related?
Yeah, maybe yes, and maybe uh, is also a question for us as adults. How much are we try to observe the relationship of our youth with artificial intelligence and with technology? Are we present when they are using technology? How we support them?
Mm.
Maybe in using, I don't know, critical thinking,
Hmm.
or, you know, how to use the
Mm.
tool. This is also an
Absolutely.
important question, right?
Yeah.
So let me end the poll and show the results for all the people, so all of you can see. So as Lisa was sharing, you voted uncertainty about the future opportunities as one of the things that you notice most. Stress about social media. This is something that probably also as adults we are experiencing.
Mm.
Also overwhelm about relationships. We are going to talk about this.
Hmm.
isolation and disconnection, and then, yeah, aggressiveness and also stress. So let's also ask you another question. So let me go back to the second one. Let me launch this. After sharing these feelings that you have noticed, what could you do? There's a mistake there. I'm sorry. What could you do about it? So we offered you a few solutions or opportunities uh, to have maybe a one-to-one conversation with youth,
Mm.
maybe offering digital detox, maybe designing or sharing policies about the use of technology, sharing emotions, your own emotions, and talking about what is going on in the world, increasing connection with nature. You and I, Lisa, we were talking about this, right?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. And it's interesting, when you look at some of these solutions that you've offered, they're very simple. And sometimes I think when we think about what's going on in the world, we feel that we need to do something more complex. And
Mm,
actually, sometimes, sort of tuning into the most simple solutions is
absolutely.
most effective.
Definitely,
you know,
definitely.
and
This,
walking
yeah,
in
sorry, go
nature.
ahead.
Yeah, no, walking in nature is, it's very simple and yet it's very grounding and it's something that everyone can access as well. It doesn't cost anything.
Yeah, absolutely. And this probably is something that youth would love to do. It's
Mm,
just that maybe we are all in the rush of our daily activities.
mm,
And as you said, these are little steps that we can take every day to support
mm,
them and to establish a different kind of relationships for their own well-being, but also
mm,
for our well-being
mm,
as a family,
absolutely.
as a group of human beings
Mm,
living, on this planet. So thank you all of you for voting and sharing. Let me stop sharing. And
mm.
please also use the chat. Leslie, thank
Mm.
you. Excitement about AI, the only positive. No one feeling very positive nowadays.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, but it is interesting, isn't it? How actually sharing emotions again is something simple. And sometimes I think we can overprotect the young people by not
yeah,
sharing how we're feeling because we feel that
yeah,
might worry them or trigger anxiety if they feel or if they know that we're also feeling anxious. But actually, it's almost the opposite in that
absolutely.
if you hide something from them and you don't share, because we need to model how we're dealing with our own anxiety. And
Yeah.
actually, it's okay to feel anxious. And actually, emotions drive your behavior. So if you're feeling anxious, you're probably going to do something about it.
Absolutely. And also um, probably the way we can interact with our with students, with youth, with our children, with young adults. It's also more through questions. So always asking, how are you working with artificial intelligence and how do you feel about that? I just had
Mm,
this discussion with my son, who is 19, and he told me, well, he's kind of releasing pressure on me because I have something that can support me and maybe solve some
mm,
issues. And I said, well, this is fantastic. How are you using it? When are you using it? And so, of course,
mm,
we also enter a different kind of in-depth discussion about his role in terms of
mm,
human, in terms of critical thinking, and is what you are finding online and through artificial intelligence. Do you think it's always the reality, true?
yeah.
And are you also checking the sources? All these kind of
Mm,
very simple questions and conversations that we can have with
mm,
them. This is also
absolutely. Yeah.
something very, very important. Well, um, in order to go into something scientifically validated, we'd like also to share with you some data that 6 seconds collected over the years. And what we produced in the last 20 years is a research called State of the Heart. And let me put the link of the State of the Heart in, sorry, I went back. The link to this research that you can download. This research, the latest one, is dated 2024, and the State of the Heart highlights the status of emotional intelligence in the world. So what is the trend? And the latest one, 2024, as I said, which is a 3-year rolling, so is collecting data from the previous 3 years, is showing an emotional recession. And what we highlighted there was that connected to well-being, especially three emotional competencies have been decreased over the years. Three competencies that 6 seconds called global drive, global emotional drive. So these are the three competencies that somehow they are directly connected, not somehow scientifically through our research, statistically connected to well-being, and on the other side to burnout. These competencies are exercising optimism, pursue noble goal, and engage intrinsic motivation. These are 3 out of 8 competencies that are part of our 6 seconds model called the KCG, Know Yourself, Choose Yourself, and Give Yourself model. And these 3 competencies are very simple, actually. Optimism means being able to find solutions and alternatives when we feel stuck. Pursue noble goal is connected to the vision, to the why, what is important to us, and how can we go in action according, always remaining true to our values. And finally, intrinsic motivation is about, finding the fire, the why, what really matters for us, and be committed to that. So our research is showing that these three main competencies are decreasing and have been decreasing drastically over the years. And unfortunately, not only for adults, but in general for all the generations, and specifically in a very, very strong way for the Gen Z. So for our young adults, as you can see, all the generations, the boomers, Gen X, my and yours, Lisa, generation,
Yeah.
the millennials also had this decreasing, but Gen Z really experienced a drastic decreasing in these three competencies.
Mm.
And if we look at this profile, we see that all the competencies have been reduced. So that's why we are talking about emotional recession, even
Mm.
navigating emotions. Lisa, this
Yeah.
when we read and watched,
Mm.
this profile the first time, we were really worried, right?
Yeah, well, it's very interesting. I mean, what comes out for me when I look at it is actually that navigate emotions,
Yeah.
and how that has gone down significantly. And I know from my own work in schools. So, just almost sharing a little story that I had. So I recently
Mm,
worked with a 12-year-old.
mm,
And I was working with them on a one-to-one basis and supporting them to be at school. So they were really struggling with their emotions, and it was stopping them from being able to come to school, and they were avoiding school because they were feeling so anxious. So we had a conversation, and they identified 24 unpleasant emotions that they're experiencing when they're thinking about school or when they're at school, and they're 12. So they haven't yet learned the skills of, well, I'm feeling these horrible emotions, but what do I do with them? And they just don't have that skill set. So their go-to response is, well, I'm just not going to go to school.
Mm.
So, so for me, that being able to navigate your emotions rather than suffer from them, so
Mm.
it's enabling them to understand what they're telling you and then use the energy within them to create better responses is vital for navigating
Absolutely.
today's world. And it's, so for me, seeing that going down, it's almost, oh gosh,
Yeah.
we've got to do something different.
Exactly. And the real question is, what can we do for them? How can we
Exactly.
equip
Yeah.
them with these skills? And this is a question that we'd like also to ask you directly. So in the chat, please uh, share your ideas. And of course, we're going to share with you what at 6 seconds we are doing, what Lisa practically in the field she's doing with families, with youth, with communities. Um, Going a little bit further with the research, the good news is that the research also pointed out that there are three global, so also for the youth, brain talents that in a way can be used, and so they are already used by people to, we say, leverage success, but also to support well-being. And one of these is resilience, but also commitment and entrepreneurship. And I just want to make the connection between these three brain talents and the three competencies connected to well-being and burnout. If you think of it, resilience and optimism, and also statistically, are directly connected because optimism speaks of hope and courage. And resilience is the way, bouncing back is a way to believe in and use hope and courage to move forward. And it's a way to put in action optimism. So, to exercise that power of not listening to the voices inside our heads saying you can't do it, but on the contrary, to really tap and build on those voices that actually increase hope and boost our courage. And then commitment. So one thing for resilience is we need to equip, and so design programs that can support the development of resilience. On the other side, there's commitment. So we can create opportunities where our youth can use commitment, can commit, can contribute. And commitment is connected to intrinsic motivation, to feeling that this is something that they care for. Commitment is about care and responsibility. So if we want them to put in action commitment, we need to create opportunities for them to do this. And then entrepreneurship, it means they want to go autonomy. To be autonomous and use autonomy. Entrepreneurship is connected to the noble goal, is the vision in action, designing something and then designing also driven by a goal, driven by a vision, and then designing the little steps, the action needed to achieve that vision. So again, we can create opportunities for them to express this.
Mhm.
So how we did this, we designed some programs at 6 seconds that I'd like to share with you. And then we will go into the practical part that is the everyday action that Lisa shared. And if you have questions, please just interact with us in the chat. The first program that I'd like to share with you is for adults. Why? Because we believe that in order to equip youth with social and emotional learning skills and with resilience, commitment, entrepreneurship, what we need to do is to support educators, teachers, consultants in education, parents, or whoever works in that space with the competencies and programs in order to support them their youth well-being. So we designed this EQ Educator program inside through which educators receive a social emotional learning curriculum. So a set of lessons that they can put in action, go in action with every day about the 8 competencies that we were mentioning previously. So emotional literacy, increasing the vocabulary about emotions, recognizing patterns about, the emotional patterns that we can, that tell us when we react and respond when something happens. And then navigating emotions, as Lisa Allen was mentioning, and then intrinsic motivation, optimism, we already talked about that, consequential thinking, being able to identify causes and consequences, also of emotional situations, and then pursue noble goal and empathy. So this ability to cognitively, emotionally, and in a responsive way to connect to others and to build, to use compassion and to build relationships. This is a program for educators that they can use to increase their own emotional intelligence, and then also working with the students to develop social emotional learning skills. And I'd like to put in the chat the link.
I think
Uh,
it's an interesting point that you often mention to me, Ilaria, is that
yeah,
it's a curriculum that you can teach to the students, but you don't have to. It can just be the way you teach the students. So it
yeah,
doesn't necessarily add more work. It's almost how you show up as a teacher.
exactly. Exactly. It's really about role modeling.
Yeah.
So, if we train educators, it is because we need to show the youth, because neuroscientifically we know that learning passes through what we see in action.
Mm.
70% of the learning passes through behaviors
Mm.
and not, uh, but it's not based on what we tell them.
Yeah.
This is probably just the effectiveness is 30%, in comparison to the behavioral learning. So we need to role model for them. And that's why we need to start with our own emotional intelligence and then going into action with social and emotional learning lessons. So this is one program for adults. But then at 6 seconds, we also decided in the last years, I think we created this pop-up festivals activities probably 10 years ago,
Mm.
and or more or less around those days. And we did it in collaboration with UNICEF to celebrate World Children's Day. So we are at 6 seconds UN action partners, and we work with the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals. And so our idea was to offer families and schools activities for children. In primary and secondary school, very simple activity for them, free activities that they can download in multiple languages, and they can host in their schools or at home, in the family, activities that can last 15 minutes, 20 minutes. And so this is a way to share with them the wisdom of emotions and allow them to set just 1, 2 steps that they can take in their own life, in order to use the wisdom of emotions. Even if they are 6 or 7, there is maybe one thing that they can share with a friend or when they go back home with their family. So we try to support their commitment, and we share resources in order to increase the resilience and then to go in action. So this is a very, very simple way that we are spreading all around the world in
Mm.
order to support youth resilience and children resilience. And again, I'd like to share with you, and everyone can host this
Yeah.
activity. So
Yeah.
please.
That's a really
Yeah,
good point, Ilaria. That was actually how I first found out about 6 Seconds, was through the pop-up festivals. And I used the resources, and there are so many resources available. So, you can dip in, you can do it in small groups, you could do it in big groups, you can share it, with your friends, your family,
yeah.
and it's a really good, it's light-hearted, but it's very impactful.
Absolutely. And again, it's also very simple to run in
Mm.
person and also online. If you can't, there are maybe there is you have a relationship in distance with some youth, for example, you can use them in multiple spaces. And
Mhm.
again, very easy to go in action with because they have instructions and they are already translated. So what you can do if you go to the link that I shared in the chat is just register. It's free, and you will be receiving the kit to use with youth and schools, and then you go also. Probably you will have to cover any learning to host a public event if you want to do that. But otherwise, you can use them privately. You can go in action in your local schools or in your family and use them for the well-being of our youth. The last program that I'd like to share with you is called, it's a kind of new one, even though we have facilitated this Climate of Emotions program for 3 or 4 years now. And this program is a community-based activation for youth, young leaders, and usually age 16, 30. And it's a way to support them, to equip them with skills in order to cope with some difficult and challenging emotions connected to climate. So it is based on 3 dimensions: feel, imaging, and growth. And we work with this youth using storytelling. So it starts with sharing stories around how they feel about climate in their life. And then we go into an in radical imagination, so activities in order to design new futures, new opportunities to coexist on this planet, and finally grow. So they try to align their own values, their own vision to what is possible for the climate and for themselves. And this is connected also to our research that we co-designed with the Yale Education Center. And this research is showing that Climate of Emotions program is building and increasing resilience in youth, and is also nurturing their sense of agency and their commitment. And this is exactly what we want to do for youth, equipping them with skills. And from Climate of Emotions, we developed a pilot called the Leadership Accelerator with Roots and Narrative 4. And this Leadership Accelerator is the next step of this program. It's really a 6-month program for youth, young leaders, that they would like to then facilitate Climate of Emotions for their peers. So we thought that once you equip the leaders, the young leaders with the skills, then it's the time to go in action for a peer-to-peer activity, to role model and to support other youth to increase their well-being and increase and be equipped with the social and emotional learning skills that they need in order to really deal with all the challenges of this time. And I'd like to put in the chat also a link to this. Um,
It's a really exciting program, because it's
it
enabling them
is
to connect to purpose,
absolutely,
and give them a way of doing actually jumping into action.
definitely. And in fact, I'd like also to put in the chat the link for the application. This leadership accelerator is a pilot, as I said, and so we will accept registrations just for 30 participants all around the world. So
Mm.
if you know youth that maybe they are into climate, and they are already maybe volunteering, and maybe they are already activists, please just share this link so they can apply, and then they will be starting this training and facilitation with us. So they will be equipped with skills both to increase their own emotional intelligence competencies and then to facilitate as a peer-to-peer program. So how do you feel about these programs? Please share some feelings, emotions in the chat. We are curious to see if at least a light in this yeah, thank you, Dina, in this maybe context that we are living with wars and polarizations and the technology overwhelming all of us is maybe offering hope, as Dina was sharing. Thank you.
Mm.
How do you feel about this, Lisa?
Yeah, no, I feel hope as well and positivity in that, sometimes I think we can focus on everything that's wrong
Mm,
and everything that we feel might be broken or isn't working or, and that's the way our brains work. We naturally focus on
mm,
the negatives. We all have a negative bias.
yeah,
But actually seeing things that other people are creating, and even with AI, yes, there's the dark side of AI, but there's an awful lot of positive things that are being done with AI, in the medical world. It's amazing. So
mm,
it's almost, and so having that ability to focus on something positive and
absolutely.
it feels better, but also it gives you opportunities to maybe try something that you didn't know was possible.
Yeah. And this is exercising optimism,
Yeah,
isn't it?
absolutely. Yeah.
It's
It's
seeing
in
the
action.
alternatives in
Yeah.
action. So, yeah, there are downsides, but also
Yeah.
there are opportunities there. In six
Yeah.
seconds, we are using a lot artificial intelligence to design our assessments, but
Yeah.
also to solve some issues and maybe to, go faster in preparing, designing
Mm,
projects and program. Of course, it depends on the right questions that we are asking
mm,
using artificial intelligence. So that's why we need to equip youth with all the competencies and the
mm.
cognitive also and emotional skills in order to ask the right questions when they
Yeah.
go online using Gemini or ChatGPT or all of the others
Yeah.
tools. And artificial intelligence should be a tool in our
Mm,
hands. And so emotional intelligence and the human side should be really there to support the use
mm.
of this tool.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, Lisa, now it's your turn,
Ah,
and you guide me and you tell me when I need to
yes, thank you.
show the slides.
Yeah, thank you very much. So maybe put up the first slide, Ilaria. That would be
Sure.
great. Thank you. So hello everyone. It's lovely to see you, and thank you very much, Ilaria, for inviting me today. So just to give you a little bit of information about me. So my name is Lisa Allen. I live in the UK in Croydon, which is just south of London, but it's part of the London Borough. And I'm a mother of three children and two cats.
Amazing.
And I have a business and I am a certified coach and a facilitator. So I coach and I train with EQ at the heart of all that I do. And my relationship with 6 Seconds started, as I said, I actually found out about 6 Seconds through the pop-up festivals. And I ran my own little pop-up with a group of local parents and their children, and that was way back in, I think, 2018. No, it might have actually been 2017. And then
Mm.
I did my own certification with 6 Seconds. I started with the EQ assessor, and then I did the brain talents, and then actually, for me, the pandemic had a big impact on my journey. So, and I just wanted to share that so you sort of see the relevance as to how
Mm,
I got into education. Because my daughter, my youngest daughter, so I have three children, and my youngest daughter was the cohort who in the UK, their GCSEs were cancelled, basically.
mm,
And she'd always had experienced anxiety at quite high levels, but when we were coming out of the first lockdown, her anxiety levels soared. And she was in her first year of sixth form. And, and it sort of almost came out of the blue. She just couldn't cope. And the school were brilliant, and I had a good relationship with her teachers and talked to them about her anxiety levels and how we would respond to it. And in
mm,
hindsight, looking back on it, what we enabled her to do was to create a habit of avoidance. So we were fixing her problems. So anything that caused anxiety, we took it
mm,
away.
mm.
And it was like, so we
Which is a
soothed.
tendency of all of
Yeah,
us as
I know. And
parents.
it's and I
Yeah,
look back and I think, oh gosh, so it was coming from a place of love, and I didn't want her to
of
feel so
course.
anxious. So I got into the habit of soothing her and fixing her problems, as did the school.
Mm,
And and when I reflect, we had a lot of time to reflect what I did during the lockdown, and it made me realize, actually, you know what? I don't feel that there's no criticism of teachers and the education system. Everyone's doing their best, but I think we're so busy and there are so many complex issues out there. We almost want to, sort of calm the emotions down and enable them to carry on studying and doing whatever. But in doing that, we're actually taking away their ability to solve their own problems. And I realized that actually I'd almost over-parented my daughter and overfixed, and I needed her to be able to step up and
mm.
develop that optimism and those skills to feel the anxiety, but carry on.
Yeah. Do you
So,
think, Lisa, that those you at the beginning I shared the three global, the three competencies,
yeah,
optimism and intrinsic motivation and noble goals that were decreasing. Probably, if these three competencies really decreased
bless
more,
you.
let's say, thank you. For Gen Z, maybe it's also because we as adults, we didn't allow and we are not allowing our youth to
Mm,
experience always in a safe way, of course, with
yeah,
us being there for them, but allowing them to experience frustration, overwhelm, and all
yeah.
these challenging emotions by themselves.
Absolutely. And and that's how, well, that was the sort of the conclusion that I came to. And so I sort of pivoted a little bit within my business and I felt, actually connected to helping educators sort of almost learn from my mistake. And it's like,
Mm,
okay, I feel that we need to do something different. And actually, we sometimes underestimate how able our young people are, but they
true.
need to be given the tools and the roadmap to do something. So I developed this program, and because I was working very closely with you, Ilaria, and everyone else in 6 seconds, and I felt
Mm,
actually it was a really good opportunity to use it as a case study. So I really felt that it was going to work. So I created this program, and it ended up being a 2-year program with a local school near to me. So it was a local state school, it was a primary school. And I developed a program because they also found. So, interestingly, actually, they were the school that I'd done the pop-up with back in 2017. And I went back in there to talk to them because I already had a relationship with them to say, look, I've developed this new program. Would you give me your feedback on it? Without
yeah.
expecting them necessarily to take it on. And they said, well, we'll do more than just give you feedback. We'll run it, which was
Amazing. I
fabulous.
remember,
Really.
I remember those days
Yeah,
because you then contacted me and you said, I need to work with teachers, a team of teachers,
yeah,
right? So because they also understood the importance of train the trainers, I mean,
yeah.
train the educators.
Yeah, absolutely. So that was back in so it was post-pandemic. So they had felt actually that they had navigated the pandemic very well. And they felt initially that they'd almost come through it relatively unscathed, maybe a little battle weary, but a little bit but unscathed. But then they actually noticed that there was almost a lag in the impact of the pandemic. And they realized that actually they needed to do something to bolster the well-being of their whole community and in particular their staff. And they noticed that the children were almost mirroring what the adults around them were experiencing.
Mm,
So they were very committed to their sort of strategy as a school was to focus on the well-being of the adults in the community.
mm,
And that's where we started. So this slide here takes you through, a whistle stop tour, but this takes you through what I did through the 2 years that I worked with them. So we kicked off, so at the very top there, we kicked off with doing the Educational Vital Signs Questionnaire, which is a questionnaire designed by 6 Seconds for education environments. And we didn't actually ask the students to answer it because we felt they were too young, but we
mm,
surveyed the parents and all the staff of the school. So they responded to this questionnaire, and that measured the vital signs of that school. And there were some interesting insights, actually. And one of the reasons we kicked off with that before we did anything was to engage everyone and to start that conversation and start on a collaborative note. So it wasn't us doing something to them and running a program to them. It was a group, a collaborative program. And I just wanted to share actually an interesting conversation that came out of it. So one of the measures within the questionnaire is about safety.
mm,
And in my experience with working with schools, risk assessments and health and safety and ensuring the safety of the young people and everyone within the community is always very, very high, as it should be. However, sometimes we can be over focused on that safety and assessing
mm,
risk. And so we had a really, really healthy and sort of interactive conversation about, well, if we've got too much focus on safety, might that be dampening down our sort of capacity to accept failure or accept things
mm.
going wrong, or to be innovative and creative if we're always focused on managing the risks? Are we
True.
encouraging enough creativity? If that
Mm.
creativity ends in some sort of failure, and obviously you don't want something to be unsafe, but there is that balance.
Yeah, we say that we need to put the person or the student or the youth into a challenging zone, which is not a danger zone. So we can go beyond our comfort zones where we can, feel also the kind of the feeling that we are in the unknown,
Yeah.
environment, but it's still safe, even though
Mm,
our brain starts, thinking, oh, I don't know
yeah.
this environment, and
Mm,
maybe they feel a little bit
yeah.
anxiety and frustration, but again, it's not a
Yeah.
danger zone.
Exactly. And feeling anxious because you don't know the answer, that's okay.
Yeah,
And it's almost helping, students, but also the teachers and everyone else in the environment and parents. It's okay to not feel okay. And
exactly.
and that's part of the process.
Mm.
So that sort of started up the conversation, and it was very interesting. So my very first inset day with all the teachers, so it was an all of staff program. And one of the reasons we did an all of staff program was because there was a perception as well that there was a disconnect between the teaching staff and the non-teaching staff.
Mm.
And yet, if you think about it, from the perspective of a student, they sometimes don't necessarily see the difference between a teaching member of staff and a non-teaching member of staff. As far as they're
Mm.
concerned, they're adults.
Yeah.
And and so they might look at the person in the playground, or the playground monitor, or even the people in catering, or even the maintenance person. They still see them as leaders. So the school very much wanted everyone to have the same training, so everybody was singing from the same hymn sheet. So that was really, really
Mm.
important. And also it provided an opportunity for everyone to connect, which they didn't always have, because some of their training was done just for the teachers, and or just for the admin people.
Yeah.
So it was an opportunity really for everyone to get involved.
The school is an ecosystem. It's just like
Yeah,
all the other organizations or groups. Um, mm, Really, we need to start thinking that also that these kind of organizations are not structures, they are living systems. And so communities and all the stakeholders inside
yeah,
are connected. And so the
yeah,
parents, but also teachers and non-teachers and the
yeah.
students. So yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. So it was all of staff. So there's where we kicked off. So we did the questionnaire, then we had an inset day where we introduced emotional intelligence and the case study, and we invited everyone to contribute to the wellbeing strategy of the school, as well as starting the journey of teaching some of the skills.
Mm.
And giving them a hands-on experience to first of all tune into what they were feeling, and then using those emotions, so raising that awareness. So awareness is the greatest agent for change, and unless you're aware of what you're experiencing and how it's impacting your life,
Yeah.
that you don't necessarily know what to do with that. So we kicked off with that, and then we did a variety of different workshops, training days, and also one-to-one EQ assessments. So we didn't make it compulsory for people to do all of them, apart from the inset days, which were sort of compulsory for
Mm.
everyone. So people opted in to it, which also gave them autonomy to use it as they wanted, and how they felt it would benefit them. So and one of the things we did actually very early on, and it's interesting, you talked about optimism being one of the key skills. So I have a number of cards here, which I'll briefly just show you, that I use.
Yes.
I always have my little toolkit whenever I go into a
I
school.
love those.
Yeah.
I love those.
But one of them is increasing optimism. And so that was very much a focus at the very beginning. And I ran a WhatsApp positivity challenge. And again, people signed up to it. They didn't have to do it, but most people did. And that every day for 30 days, they got a little challenge that was something that, just an everyday little challenge, like you've spilt your coffee on, on your work, or something like that. So it was a little challenge, and they had to respond with
Beautiful.
three positives. And
Mm.
everybody was involved. So everybody every morning got a little challenge, and they had to respond. But it ended up becoming something that everyone talked about in the staff room. And it was like, oh gosh, there was nothing positive about that challenge. Or, but what it did was it started connecting people, but it started
Exactly.
to change the way they responded to challenges. So rather than sort of seeing it as a negative thing, they were immediately prompted to say, okay, but what's the positive as a result of that? And what could I do?
Yeah, and also sharing in a group, just like WhatsApp, you can see others' answers, and
Yeah,
so you learn, and then you
absolutely.
maybe you start doing things that you never thought. So
Yeah,
this is the power of coming together and create these little communities. When we think of communities, we think of big
yeah,
things, right? But no, can be a WhatsApp group as you
absolutely.
created for
Yeah.
them.
So that, and interestingly, people started to notice how they were changing and their behavior patterns were changing.
Mm,
And even, there was one person there, and, very sad, unfortunately, no one was hurt, but they had a car accident. And they
mm.
said that they responded in the moment. Of course, they were, it was not a very nice experience, but very, very quickly they responded with, well, but what are the three positives? And
Amazing.
And it just
Amazing.
changed their mindset from being looking at
Exactly.
the negatives to immediately. So that was just an example. So we did little things like that throughout the year. So I'm just conscious of time. So I'm going to sort of almost race.
Yeah, yeah. And then there's a question for you, but we keep it Lloyd for the end. So thank
Yeah.
you for asking that. I will ask Lisa your questions later.
Yes, no, absolutely, yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah, so we did the all staff training days, and we also did some parent workshops, and I also involved the students. And amazingly, actually, the students were very creative when you
Mm.
allow them to be, and you allow them the autonomy to put what they think they would like the well-being strategies to be. And some of them came out with some fabulous ideas. Some of
Mm.
them a little bit impractical, uh, but
Well, we need,
yeah,
imagination and visionaries
yeah,
because what we think it's impossible, well, the reality is definitely at times, it overcomes imagination, and we
yeah.
are experiencing this at a global level and
Yeah,
political level.
definitely.
So we can definitely use our imaginations. Maybe it's not for now, but maybe
Yeah,
it is our way to plant seeds of what it could be a possible future.
yeah.
So if students go into this process of imagination is perfect. It's what we want.
Mm,
Imagination is one of the talents that we
absolutely.
need to
Yeah.
drive well-being also.
Yeah. But if they're given, if as adults we're telling them what they need to do, then they don't always, it might not have the right impact on them. Whereas if you say to them, okay, this is the problem. And there was one of the young ones, they had some well-being ambassadors. So they appointed well-being ambassadors as part of this program.
Mm,
And there were students that were age 10, 11, and one of them came up with a fantastic idea. And he said, when you're having a bad day, you write it on a piece of paper and screw it up and throw it in the bin. And that was his strategy. And it was like, well, that's
yeah.
great.
Yeah,
Fabulous.
absolutely,
So,
because your brain is just
yeah,
saying, throw it away,
throw it
throw it
away.
away. And
Feel the
that's it.
feeling, throw it in the
Physically
bin.
throw it away. I
Yeah,
will use it.
yeah,
Please say thank you to to the
absolutely. Yeah,
students.
yeah,
Absolutely, I will use
yeah.
it.
So yeah, so just sort of some of the impact and the ripple effect. So there were examples like that, but some of the top impact that we noticed and we measured. So the second year we redid the EVS,
Mm,
the educational vital
the
signs,
signs.
and all the results had improved. There was more engagement, and it just shifted the dial just a little bit on all the success factors. And we also redid the questionnaires for the people that had one-to-ones, and equally there were some people that had gone through some sort of life event that had had
Mm,
an adjustment, but on the whole, there was an increase in most of the skills, which was good. So it's a measurable tool that is
exactly.
showing. So, because sometimes I think when you're working with some of the softer skills, it's all anecdotal, but having a
Mm,
tool, the 6 seconds tools, enables you to have a structure to the program and a means of measuring the impact.
yeah.
So that was really, really powerful. But also, sort of more anecdotally, the relationships changed. So there was far more connectivity within the non-teaching and the teaching staff, but even with all the staff and also with the parents. The parents had the common language, the students were involved. So it really was an
Yeah.
ecosystem program with all of them. And they had a
Fantastic.
common language. And there was also a shift in people pausing before reacting. And these
Mm,
and a lot of the changes actually that people noted, because we did a big questionnaire at the end, was how it had impacted their home life, because they'd
mm,
gone home and they practiced some of the things with their families, and they'd noticed a change, and their some of their partners had said to them, you've changed. So
yeah.
it literally changed the way they showed up. So
And this is one of
powerful.
the key aspects of every social emotional learning program. So allowing or even pushing at times or asking them to do some things to connect school
Mm,
and home. So what can you do at home? And
yeah.
sometimes it's intentional, and some other times it is not, but people in your family, they already noticed that you have
Mm,
changed. But uh, at times you are also so engaged, and maybe the
Yeah.
activities that you have done are so good that you want to
Yeah.
share with other people. And so if the students and the teachers can have this engagement, and they
Mm.
can go back home and discuss and share, and then they are not only changing their own lives, but they are
Mm.
impacting the life of others. So,
Mm. Absolutely. Yeah. So that was that. And then, the other things that I've done since then. So interestingly, I didn't really work with the students. I worked with the adults within that community. I did
mm,
have some interaction with the wellbeing ambassadors, but mainly it was with the adults. But then since then, I realized actually I wanted to take it further. So I then did my accreditation with the youth assessment, which are the same assessments as the adults, but they're for the youths. And then this sort of almost developed my program even further in that, so I've only just started using this, but I've done it with a couple of families so far. And actually having a youth assessment version of the adult ones, I've worked together with the families, so with the parents, but also with the students, to understand each other's patterns and understand how they're influencing each other and what opportunities there are to give a young person so I shared earlier about that young person who was experiencing a lot of unpleasant emotions and they didn't know what to do with them. If you can sort of give them a structure and say, well, that's okay to be feeling those emotions, and these are the skills that when you develop them, those horrible emotions, they're not necessarily going to go away because that's part of being human,
mm.
but there are ways, the skills you can learn to navigate them more effectively. So you
And
don't have,
reduce the intensity
yeah,
first and then
exactly.
transform.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And you can use the wisdom in the emotion and the fuel within the emotion to help you achieve whatever it is you want to achieve in life. So
absolutely.
I'm just starting to work with families to give them a roadmap. So rather than, thinking back to my own experience with my daughter, so rather than fixing their problems,
Mm,
you're giving them a toolkit so they can
absolutely.
fix their own problems.
And you
So
use the profiles also. So
yes,
you,
so using the profiles because then you've actually
yeah.
got it as black and white. It's something you can measure.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So that
And I
was really,
know we are a little bit,
yes, we're a
really
little bit right.
almost at it, but I'd
Yeah.
like you to mention also your work with the communities.
Yeah.
And of
So
course, you
this
can ask
again, just
us.
touching on this.
Yeah, and
So
Lisa,
as
maybe you can also leave your email in the chat so people
yes,
can also reach out to you just in case. But yes, there's this last piece of your work in the social impact, which is
yeah.
really relevant.
So as my role as network leader is to host an EQ cafe. So an EQ cafe is just an opportunity really to host a get together with people in the community. And and I've only recently taken on this role, but it's already opened up conversations with people within the community and again creating that common language, but also creating a safe space for people to explore what they're experiencing. And, where I live, there is a lot of focus on living costs. There is a lot of focus on, what's happening in our community. There's a lot of graffiti, there's a lot of, unrest in the younger people within our community. So it's an opportunity, it's intergenerational as well. So it's an opportunity for the different generations to sit together and talk about what they're experiencing and reconnect with what's important to them.
Yeah.
So that's a whistle stop tour as to what I've been doing and how I've been using the tools in a practical way and how they're impacting the community. And I'm more than happy to take questions or if anyone would like to contact me
Yes,
and find
I
out more.
thank you, Lisa, for your testimonial, because this is really a way to show that it's possible to do something in the society, for schools, for communities, in a way that is structured. And so you can have tools and resources to share with people to equip adults and youth. And there's a question, so let me stop sharing. A question from Lloyd, who was asking something like, if you could go back, you said, you shared at the beginning that you started with the EQ assessor certification with us,
Yeah.
so with the tools. Lloyd and I, we had a conversation about the possible programs that he'd like to, certifications that he'd like to start with. So if you
Hmm.
could go back, Lisa, would you start with, again, with the EQ assessor certification or with EQ practitioner certification? For those who do not know, the practitioner is about the model, and the EQ assessor, the model, so emotional intelligence in action and all the EQ skills. EQ assessor is about the assessments, which
Hmm.
are actually based on the model, but you can absolutely immediately go with the EQ assessor certification.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, for me personally, if I went back, I think I would still do it the same. But I don't know if that's because I'm working as a coach. I think it's probably, for
Could be.
me, it was almost the missing piece of being a coach because I was, when you're working with, leadership skills and working, building teams and creating environments in which people thrive,
Mhm.
it's at some level it is a soft skill and and having a tool that gives you structure, but also a means of measuring it
Yeah.
I found really impactful. So for me, I had to become an assessor in order to be able to use them within my work as a coach.
Yeah,
But of
absolutely.
course,
And
it starts with yourself. So
yeah, and during the EQ assessor certification, you have a foundation about the models because it is,
yeah,
the assessments are rooted in the KCG model. So absolutely, the 6 seconds model. So you know about the competencies. Of
yeah,
course, it's not like experiencing the EQ practitioner certification, but again, you can do just like Lisa to go with the EQ assessor and then EQ practitioner certification, or the other way around,
yeah,
depending on your needs. Lisa, as a coach, needed tools to integrate her kit that she already
mm,
had. And other people, maybe they do not need this immediately. They need to grow and to have resources, activities, exercises that they
mm,
can do with their clients, for example, or with the students, with the teachers, with the people they need to support. So it's really up to you. And thank you, Lloyd, for the question. Thank you, all of you, for being here. Thank you, Isabel, and all. Thank you, because I understand that you needed to log off, and everyone else who joined us. It was a real pleasure. You will be receiving the recording, so maybe we can put in the chat our emails, Lisa, so
oh
people
yeah,
can also reach out to us and directly. And so hopefully it was helpful for you. Please share maybe these links that we shared with you to support other people, to know more, to learn more, and also to support youth in equipping themselves with these EQ skills. So thank you again, Lisa.
you're very welcome. I'm just doing a little message, but I'm making lots of errors in my spelling, but. But thank you for letting me share that. And as you put in the chat as well, you've shared the case study so people can look at that.
Yes, absolutely.
And if anyone's interested in finding out more or you'd like to know a bit more, I'm always happy to share exactly what I've done, and sharing how I've done it and the tools that I've used, because I believe, a rising tide lifts all boats.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So
Thank you,
thank you.
everyone. Have a nice rest of the day. And please, you can visit the Public Health Association and their events, so you can continue explore and attend other opportunities to work with and towards the well-being of communities. Thank you, everyone. Goodbye.